Hello, friends. Hello, friends. A tradition unlike any other.
Oh, my goodness. In your life, have you seen anything like that?
There it is! Adam Scott, a life changer. Mashed potato!
Here it comes.
This is the 19th Tee podcast. Kieran Marsh and Nathan Drudy back with you. Well, we flagged this one, Drudster, on Monday evening. There's so many ways we could introduce tonight's guest. He's a good friend of this podcast. He is now a Korn Ferry Tour player. He's been a co-host even of this podcast, and is shaping as my +1 to your wedding. So there's really no other way to bring him in than to say hello to the wizard, Justin Warren. Wiz, what's happening?
Not a lot, boys. How's it going?
Well, an awful lot. Where do we find you? It looks like you're tucked into, what is it, a university dorm room? What's doing?
Pretty much, yeah. I'm at a studio apartment in Dubbo playing the Western Open right now. So it's kind of small, very cozy. Kind of reminds me of like the mining camps that I've stayed in, playing some pro-ams up in the mining town. So it's a little nicer than that. But yeah, it's enough to do the job for a few nights.
Now, we did flag this one with the listeners when we recorded the weekly episode that you'd be joining us halfway through the Western Open. So this will be a difficult one to navigate because by the time this comes out, people will know the result. But you're sitting pretty well after day one. It's not necessarily what I want to talk to you about, though, because it's not nearly as interesting as the front row seat you had to what you described as the gale force before we hit the record button. You were playing with Daniel Gale, another good friend of this podcast, who sits in the lead after day one. So a good show, but it's very rarely that it's to do with the golf, is it? Because he makes Marnus Labuschagne look like a pretty normal human being, does Gaelic?
Yeah, I had the front row seat to the Gale show out there today. It was pretty impressive. The guy literally holed the world, and the one hole where he was out of play, he chipped in from like 25 meters away. So it was pretty impressive, and I couldn't keep up with him today. So I did my best, but 4 unders good enough to be 5 shots behind him. So I've got a bit of work to do tomorrow to catch him.
What's it like coming back to Australia, mate? Now you're playing in Dubbo. Only a matter of a few weeks ago, you were playing in the final of the Korn Ferry Tour Q School, which we'll get to. But I mean, it's worlds apart at the moment where you are right now and where you were a few weeks ago.
Yeah, it's it's kind of humbling to be back out here. I kind of had a pretty good time while I was in America. I was fortunate enough to play some really good courses and some events on some nice tracks. So to be out in Dubbo, the country, it's a little different. But it's just good to be playing. Happy to be here. It's great to be back at home, playing some competitive golf. I know the guys that have been stuck here for the good part of this year haven't really had much to play in. So I really feel for them, and I'm pretty grateful to have got out of here when I did, because it allowed me to play golf nonstop while I was in the US. So it's great to see all the boys out playing and competing again, and it's good to be back home playing a few events with them over the next couple of months.
What was your last sort of 6 months, I guess? Give us a bit of a rundown. I mean, it's been action-packed. You've played in so many events. We've been in conversation. You've been traveling all around America. You've played on the Korn Ferry Tour Q School, as we touched on. Just maybe give us sort of the brief overview of what your last 6 months has been like, and obviously your decision to go to America as well.
Yeah, so essentially I'd played pretty well in the few events that we had at the start of the year here. Had a lot of confidence in my game and where it was at. And, those few good results meant that I had a few dollars in the bank. And just with the way the schedule and that was shaping up, it was looking like, if I stayed at home, we weren't going to have an event to play for another 6 or so months. And I just thought at this point, in my development, it just wasn't the right move to stay home. I needed to get over to America and just keep playing and competing, especially with how well I had been playing. So I just decided to get over there. And at the time, COVID and things had kind of settled down a little bit, and I was able to get the exemption to leave and go over to America. So I went over there, I think it was like the 8th of May. and had, like a 10-week schedule set up. Had 5 or 6 mini tour events to play, 4 or 5 kind of pre-queues for PGA Tour events, which were then like the qualifiers for the Mondays. So I kind of had that 10-week set that allowed me to then come home, do 2 weeks of quarantine, and then get ready for the Northern Territory PGA into the first stage of European Tour School, which was set to be at Rosebud down in Melbourne. But kind of one thing led to another. My flight home got cancelled due to, Australia pretty much being in full lockdown. Northern Territory got cancelled, European Tour School got cancelled. And, I was just in talks with my travel agent pretty much every day. And, he was just saying, it looks like you're not going to get home till next year. So I was like, oh, well, it just got to a point where I went, there's nothing else I can do. I may as well just keep traveling and playing again. So I kind of took a couple of weeks off. I went back to Little Rock where I went to school, just caught up with the boys there and just kind of sat down and took a breath, because I had 10 week much nonsense, and just would reassess if things changed with the situation here. But nothing changed, and it just got to a point where I was going to be there long enough that I thought, heck, I may as well do Korn Ferry Tour School while I'm here. So entered that, and obviously had some success, got through first stage, got through second stage, and final stage was I just completely disappointing, embarrassing, whatever. But it was basically 6 months of just golf nonstop, pretty much. A couple of weeks off here and there just to kind of try and settle down and relax for a little bit. But essentially it was 6 months of playing mini tour events, pre-Qs, Monday Qs, and Korn Ferry Tour School.
Take us through. I think the great majority of golf fans here in Australia would have no concept of the logistics involved in a trip like that, right? We tune into the PGA Tour week in, week out. You see guys who we're familiar with, your Cam Smiths, your Mark Leishmans, they've got full status. They walk into tournaments. What is a guy who goes over there with no status? How does it even work? You're emailing people, can I get a spot in these pre-Qs? How do you even get a 10-week schedule put together when you're going over there essentially, on a whim?
Essentially just through kind of word of mouth. You hear about mini tours here and there. And in terms of entering pre-Qs or Monday Qs, it's just as simple as Googling, Travelers Championship pre-qualifier. And, you kind of find a link to it there, and you just kind of enter online. And obviously there's a criteria for entering those. But essentially those are pretty simple. But the mini tours and stuff, you just kind of hear through guys who have been there and done it. And, they say, this mini tour is good. There's good prize money there. The entry fees are good, whatever. So it's just a matter of kind of doing some Googling, finding the mini tours that you want to play on, the ones that are logistically easy to get to. There's some that are kind of in the middle of nowhere, and, you got to fly somewhere and then drive 4 or 5 hours. So those ones are kind of tough, but you just try and find some events that are as easy as possible to get to, and just try and, like I said, just try and work it out, with the Monday Qs and whatever, and just build a bit of a schedule. And, the mini tours do a good job of following the Korn Ferry and PGA Tour most weeks. So you can generally find a mini tour event in the same state or in a very close area to where the Monday qualifier might be. So, you play a mini tour event that might finish on Friday, and you're able to just hang around for a couple of days and then do the Monday qualifier. So, like I said, a lot of Googling, kind of just figure out a bit of a schedule, work out the logistics of travel and things like that, and then just kind of put it on paper and make sure it all looks good.
And then what about things like your preparations? Obviously, when you're back here, you've got your home club, you've got your home comforts, you're close to your coach. When you're over there in an environment that's unfamiliar, was it important to try and get yourself into a bit of a daily routine in terms of your practice to stay on top of that while you're also trying to figure out where you're going next?
Yeah, it's obviously really difficult. Those first 10 weeks for me were just kind of nonstop travel, playing maybe a day off here or there. But, because I was traveling and playing so much, like I really didn't have time or have the energy to, kind of have a day where I go, right, I'm going to go to the golf course for 4 or 5 hours today and just practice. Most of my practice was done during practice rounds, practice days for events. And, I was fortunate that when I did have, a few days break in between, I could go to Scottsdale in Arizona, where I have a few friends, and I was just able to kind of tag along with them and go out to like TPC Scottsdale and practice out there. So there really was no normality to anything I did. There was no routine. It was fly to an event, practice round, play, fly to the next place, practice round, play, maybe a day off here or there, fly to the next place and practice round and play. There was just no real time to just kind of relax and do a bit of work on my game.
You mentioned that obviously at the back end of the Aussie season, you had some really good finishes, which allowed you to get a bit of cash into your pocket, and answer this however you will. But how do you go to the States and I guess spend a significant amount of money knowing that there's no potential status at the end if things don't go well for you? Like, how do you manage that internally? Because I guess that must be a pretty big shadow hanging over your head.
Yeah, I mean, obviously it's a huge risk. The only way I can kind of internally explain it to you guys is that I really don't play golf for money. It's got nothing to do with how much it costs to play this, or how much it costs to do that, or if I do this, how much money could I make? Like, for me, it's just all about just playing and competing and trying to win golf tournaments, whether it's a mini tour event for 10,000 or the Western Open for 9,000 or the Australian Open for 250,000. Like, for me, I just go to these events and I just love playing and competing. And obviously going to America, it was only intended to be for, a 10-week trip. I had the money to do that and, do it well, stay in good hotels and try and eat well and, get rental cars and stuff, just to make sure I do it right. Because I was like, it's a 10-week trip. We'll do it properly, eat well, stay safe and do the right thing. But it just ended up being a 6-month journey that, ended up being a lot more money than I had budgeted. And it was, it certainly hurt the bank account. But like I said, I come back here and I'm not worried about the money because, I've got a family that support me, mum and dad. They support me all the way. And I'm fortunate enough to be a member at the Australian Golf Club, where I have a few members there who back me financially here and there with a few dollars. So that's a big help as well. So in terms of going overseas for long periods of time and spending a bucket load of cash, it's really not my concern. I'm there to play golf. I'm there to win. And if I play well, then, the financial side of it sorts itself out.
We wouldn't have had an opportunity to earn any money here in Australia anyway, mate, because there weren't any tournaments being played. So, but we'll get to
Exactly
get to scheduling in a little bit. Keen to get your experiences on how tough Monday qualifiers are, because Monday Q Info on Twitter is a great follow, but keen to get your thoughts on how difficult an environment that is and how cutthroat it is, because we see some scores coming through and the narrow margins. Just keen to get a first-hand account of how tough it really is out there.
Yes. So the few that I did, I had to do the pre-Q to get into the Monday. So essentially that's on a Thursday or Friday, and there'll be 60 or 70 guys, and roughly the top 15 will get through. So these are the guys that are your amateurs, kind of your scratch handicap golfers and your kind of other pros who aren't exempt into the Monday. So most of those that I did, you only had to shoot 1 or 2 under to get through. That gets you into the Monday, and then the Mondays are as cutthroat as it gets. It's shoot 63 or go home. I had a few where I got off to some really good starts, and then you just kind of don't keep it going through the middle of the round. And, next thing you know, you're only 2 under through 12 or 13 holes. And, you might try and press it the last 5 or 6 to try and, make as many birdies or eagles on par 5s or whatever you've got coming in. And if you pull it off and shoot 5 or 6 or 7, great, you might have a chance. But, there was a few times where I just kind of had 1 or 2 over those last 6 trying to press it, and you shoot even par. And yeah, you go even par, that's not that bad. But in a Monday qualifier, it's, it's coming 30th or whatever out of 80 guys. So essentially, like I said, it's 63 or go home. Guys just go balls deep out there in those Mondays. It's silly. It's 18 holes. It's send it. You just hit drive everywhere. If you pull it off 18 holes, you're going to have probably 18 really good looks at birdie. And if you make a few, you can roll them in and shoot those good numbers. And there's only 4 spots out of 80 or 90 guys, whatever it is. So there was a few that I did where only 5 under might have been a playoff because, kind of tough conditions and a tough day. But there was a couple where I think the one that I did for the Barbasol in Kentucky, it might have been 3 9s and a 10 got through. So 8 under might have sent you home. And there was a couple of Korn Ferries that I saw where, 4 guys shoot 9 under, so 8 under goes home. Like, it's just crazy. It's brutal.
I'm very reticent to bring this up.
I had a feeling this was coming.
The putt. Can you just take us through? I'm watching it again, and your face, you're just in shock, mate. Like, yeah. I guess it made golf headlines around the world. It was everywhere, but it was just for context, a lip out putt that lost the sudden death to get into the Barracuda. I mean, just give us the rundown of what's happening in that sort of 30 seconds leading into that putt and then 30 seconds post. I guess your face the whole story, but yeah, how are you feeling in that moment?
Yeah, I mean, essentially what happened was, firstly, I can't begin to explain how nervous I was. Literally uncontrollable shaking. Like, it was just one of those situations where I just have not ever been there before. And, it's like I'm walking down the first playoff hole and I'm like, if I win this, like, I'm playing PGA Tour event this week. Like, it's just a seriously crazy situation. And, I hit a good drive and a solid wedge shot in. Like, I was quite impressed with myself that I managed to actually hit 2 good shots because I couldn't keep still. Like, it was just crazy. But yeah, I had just missed the green with my wedge shot. I kind of had an awkward little chip, but hit a great chip as well. Like, I was just, even after hitting it, I went, wow, like, how did you just do that? Like, I can't even keep my hands still. Like, so anyway, so Mark had hit his second shot on the green as well, and he had about 15 feet for eagle. And so where I had hit my chip to, my coin was going to be directly on his line. And obviously, my brain is going crazy. Everything feels like it's happening so fast, like 1,000 miles an hour. I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know what I'm thinking. And all I can say is that 30 seconds kind of leading up to that part was almost like a out of body experience. Like, I don't even remember really missing the putt. Like, it was just this crazy period where I just didn't even feel like I had control of anything. And I just kind of quickly said to Mark, I'm just going to clean that up. Because I was kind of thinking I'll just tap that in for 4 and make Mark have to make his 15-footer for 3 to win the playoff. And, if he misses, obviously we go to the next. So I just kind of quickly walked up, put my coin down, picked the ball up, gave it a little wipe off, put it back down. And like, I just can't tell you how quickly I tried to put that ball in the hole. Like, it was just this literally a yip of a stroke. Like, I don't even, like I said, I don't even really remember missing it, but I just remember like kind of like the ball not going in the hole. And then it was like, I came back too. And I just was like, oh, wow. Like, did I really just miss that? Like, what just happened? And it's just complete shock. Obviously there was I was really embarrassed, like completely devastated at missing the putt, obviously, because it was so short. And in the situation, missing a putt like that and then giving Mark 2 putts from 15 feet to win the playoff. But it was just a bizarre, crazy 30. Like I said, it felt like I know what I was doing, or it was like I'd never played golf before. That's what it felt like. I was walking up this 1-footer, just thinking that, it's just a 1-footer, I'll just tap it in. But I felt like I just couldn't even make a stroke at it. Like, it was just awful. So obviously what entailed after that, I didn't expect at all for it to be, filmed and then posted on PGA Tour's social media channels. Was I didn't find out until about an hour after it happened. I kind of missed the part. Mark 1 shook his hand, whatever, and kind of walked back to the clubhouse trying to process it, and was kind of heading back to the hotel, just like, you know what, it's, it's just one of those things. Like I'll learn from it, and I'll be so much better off thinking that I've left the golf course and, it's in the past. Forget about it. I'm normally pretty good at forgetting about, little shitty mistakes like that. But, to kind of go back, have a shower, and then, kind of start getting a couple of messages about, I saw the putt, and I'm like, well, where did you see it? Like, how did you see it? And then next thing, it's everywhere. And within an hour, like, the thing's got millions of views. I'm getting messages left, right, and center from complete strangers, comments just going nuts. Like, it was just bizarre. It was a crazy 24, 48 hours for me after that, which I wasn't too happy about, because obviously it's the most embarrassing moment of my career. For it to be on camera and posted the way it was pretty disappointing from PGA Tour end, but obviously they have a job to do, and something like that's going to get some clicks. So that was a crazy experience that I just hope never happens again. But it was obviously one that, I'm not glad that it happened, but it's going to make me much better for the future.
You said two things there that I find really interesting. So the first is that you're pretty good generally at forgetting and moving on. And I think obviously in a game like golf, that's really important. I remember an interview with John Rahm not all that long ago, where he quoted Ted Lasso about being a goldfish, and you need to have the ability to just forget straight away and move on. But I also note you saying you'd be better off for it. So I wonder how you balance the need to probably put it out of your mind, because you could probably be haunted by a moment like that, but also probably hold on to a little bit of it, knowing that you learnt a lot from that scenario, but also potentially even have a bit of a chip on your shoulder to the fact that it was blasted to the world, and a moment made light of your misfortune, that you could use that as a little bit of motivation. So I wonder how you balance that moment now in your recall. Do you think about it often, ever, mildly? Like, is it still there and fresh, or is it something you try to just process and now you just move on completely?
It's definitely not fresh. I mean, it's not one of those things that haunts me. I don't get over 1-footers now and just start shaking uncontrollably and not, and miss them all the time. Like, I can tell you, I haven't missed a 1-footer since. But, it's definitely one of those things that in the future, next year I plan on heading back to America and doing, Mondays pretty much for the whole year. So, obviously it's one of those things where I know that, if I happen to get into a very similar situation again, that I just know that I just need to relax, take some really big, deep breaths, and just kind of settle down and take my time, and know that, there's just no rush in these kind of situations. Like I said, it doesn't haunt me. I don't play, these events like the Western Open and, think about the putt, and, if I'm in a playoff or, don't miss the 1-footer, I don't think about things like that. It's just, like I said, it's simply just going to be, next year, when I'm in those Mondays and having a crack. And if I happen to find myself in a playoff again, it's just, if I have another 1-footer, I'm not going to be over it I'll be trying not to think about, the last 1-footer that I missed in this playoff, but I'll more be trying to think about, the process of taking some deep breaths, relaxing, settling down, and just knowing that I don't have to walk up and tap the 1-footer in. I can just mark it, take my time, and relax. And it's just one of those things where learn an extremely hard lesson in an extremely important scenario. But, in terms of being better off for it, like I said, I just know that if I'm ever in that situation again, there's just no need to rush anything.
Were you, and I'm conscious, we note that you obviously spent some time in the States at college at Little Rock, go Trojans, as we see on the shirt there, but
yes,
were
sir.
you surprised at all by the sheer scale of golf in America? And by context, I kind of mean, we tune in week out to the PGA Tour, and I think most people would have no idea about the many levels below what they see. And you kind of flagged mini tours, pre-Qs, Monday Qs. I mean, you compare it to what we have here, even at the best of times, not least of which what we're going through now back home in Australia. But the sheer scale of golf over there seems enormous.
It's literally another level. I can't even explain it. Like, it's America. Everything's bigger and better. They love their sports. Obviously, their football is crazy. College football games are packed out all the time. It's like, it's basically like state of origin matches at college football games. Like, that's the kind of crowds that they get. So they just do everything bigger and better. And in terms of golf, there's just so many people, so many good players over there that just the depth is just crazy good. Like every miniature event that I played, there's guys in the field who have, won on Korn Ferry, or there's even guys that might have won on PGA Tour. And, Americans, like, they just love their golf, that they just know, like, they know where the mini tours are, and they just love it. Like, they always looking at scores, and there's people always out there watching and following. And, it's just like, they just love it so much that even the tragics, like, they're just out there just following mini tour events. And there's always people out there, like, in terms of, like volunteers and stuff, like there's live scorers at mini tour events. Like, it's just the little things over there, even in the mini tour events, that it's like, wow, like, this is what, sometimes we even struggle to have these things at, Aussie tour events. And I'm just like, it's just crazy. It's just a crazy another world. It's ridiculous.
You mentioned about the another world. The Korn Ferry Tour Q School must have been something really special to obviously play in, really challenging. But I guess your results showed that you were certainly up to the standard of playing and I guess competing really competitively. Tell us about, I guess, Korn Ferry Tour skill in a nutshell, what it, I guess, entails and how many levels there are to it, because there seems to be about 1 million events on their schedule that you have to get to the final stage, and then you did get to the final stage. Tell us about playing in, I guess, what that final event's kind of like, and your nerves, as you touched on before as well.
Yeah, so essentially Korn Ferry Q School, there's basically 4 stages. There's a pre-qualifying stage, first, second, and final. So guys who go to the pre-Q are obviously guys who aren't exempt to first. So I got exempt into first purely just because of my having status on the Australasian tour. So guys get through pre-Q, and then they get to first, and then they meet the other guys who are exempt at first. So I had first stage in Chicago, got the overflow site because I entered late just because I wasn't really sure if I was hanging around or not. And, I mean, any guy that you speak to who's done Q school will just tell you, like, it's just brutal. Like, everybody's out there. Everyone knows what's on the line. Everyone knows that literally one bad hole could just mean that you don't have a job next year. Like, it's just brutal. Everybody's like so intense that week. Guys aren't really talking, like, even, guys who are good friends. It's, like that week, it's like you guys are playing for your careers this week. So it's just, there's just really nothing like Q school. So, I go to first stage in Chicago. I mean, I was absolutely blessed to even get through first stage. I kind of wrote a little reply to one of that Monday Q Info's tweets, because I think he was out there in Chicago at my Q school site. And so I was on the 15th hole, which is this par 5. Guys are just hitting 5-iron wedge all week because it's just brutal tee shot. And I'm kind of around the number, figuring out, what am I going to do? Should I have a crack? Should I just play as a 3-shotter? But it just wasn't in me to play it as a 3-shotter. And to be honest, hitting the 5-iron off the tee is just as risky as having a crack, because the landing area is tight. Like, you only got to pull a 5-iron 10, 12 meters left and get a bad bounce, and you're in the water anyway. So I'm like, I'll hit 5 wood. I'll try and take the water out of play. And if I hit a good one, I get home in 2. If I don't, I just lay up and just wedge it on anyway. So I hit it a little left, thought it'll be fine, but I'll hit a provisional just in case. Don't want to have to come back to the tee. The provisional goes even further left. So I'm like, right, that one's probably not in play, but I'm pretty confident that I'm going to find the first one. So we walk up there. The guys are back kind of hitting their layup. So I'm like, I'll just walk up and just start having a look, because I'm confident I'm going to find it. And I've never done this before, but I just thought, I'm going to put a timer on just because, of the situation. Like, I don't want to, find the ball and be like, oh yeah, I think that's inside 3 minutes, and then have the 2 guys go, oh, actually, we think it's out. So I just was like, I'm just going to put a timer on just so that, there's no controversy. Guys aren't, starting to have arguments. Like, because I'm 100% confident I'm finding this ball. So anyway, so about a minute goes by and I haven't found it yet. And the guys, they come up and meet me after hitting their second shots. And I'm like, I haven't found it yet. So I'm still walking around, and, kind of another 10, 15 seconds goes by, and another 10 seconds goes by. And I'm like, wow, this is at 2 minutes. I still haven't found this ball. And then it kind of hits me. I'm like, if I don't find this ball, if I don't find either of these balls, I'm going back to the tee and hitting 5, and like I'm making 9 at best, and then I'm not getting through at all. So I'm kind of walking right now. I'm running around. Like I'm so anxious now. Like it's 2 minutes 20, 2 minutes 30, 2 minutes 40. Still haven't found this ball, and I'm like, this is it. Like I'm done. And I just kind of start like literally kind of running, and I was just walking along the fence line, like near the out of bounds. And I look at the clock, and it's like 2:55, and I'm like, oh shit, like this is it. I'm done. I'm going back to the tee, and I see this ball, and I'm like, boys, I found a ball. And I go over to it, and it's my ball. And I'm like, oh my, it was my first one too. I'm like, oh my goodness. And it was like 2 minutes 57, I think it was, like when I stopped the clock. So I'm like, I was 3 seconds from going back to the tee and hitting 5 and making 9 and shooting 76 and missing by 3 or 4 shots. So anyway, so I find it, I make par, I birdie 17 and make it on the number. So that was just a crazy last 4. So lucky to even have made it through. And then I go to second stage. Now, second stage is even more pressure packed, because if you get through second, like you've got guaranteed conditional on the Korn Ferry. So it's like this was almost my final stage, because I'm like, if I get through here, I wasn't even supposed to be, I was supposed to fly home 3 months ago. Like for me, if I get through, like I'm like, this is going to be unreal. So I played really good the first 2 rounds. Kind of struggled the last 2 days, but the final round, it was brutal, like real windy. Greens got firm and fast. Had 2 under my last 5 or 6, I think it was, to get through. Like I finished 10 under, and I think 9 under got through. So like that was just another extremely brutal week. Like the back 9, when you're around the number, is just so intense. Like there's so much pressure, guys everyone stops talking to each other, because it's like, this is business time. And it just when you hit that back 9 in that last round of a Q school, like it's just, things just change, and it's just a crazy, weird, intense couple of hours. So, and then go to final stage, and it feels like obviously I haven't played PGA Tour event or a Korn Ferry event, but it feels like a tour event, like there's some guys there who have won on PGA Tour. Like I'm pretty sure Jonathan Bird might have been there. Like he's won like $18 million on PGA Tour or something. And there's guys there who won on Korn Ferry in the last few years who are back at Q school. And like Jason Scrivener's there. He's like 150 in the world. Brandon Stone's there. He's 140 in the world. There's the Tour vans there, the Tyler's vans there. There's just people everywhere. There's Korn Ferry staff running around. You got the credentials to get into the clubhouse. It's like it felt like a legit event, and it was just something that I hadn't really experienced before. Like it felt kind of like an Aussie Open in terms of the amount of stuff that was happening, around the clubhouse and things like that. So it was a like really intense week. Like I just kind of had, to put it simply, it was probably the worst week I've ever had playing golf. Like it was nothing off the course was ever, like I was just never comfortable all week. I kind of had an incident with my host family early in the week, and I had to move houses. And then, the golf course just didn't suit me. I wasn't swinging well. The weather was terrible. And, I was only a week away from flying home, and I had obviously been away for, just about 6 months. So it just kind of all, for me, that week just kind of all hit me at once. And I was just, after those first couple of days, I'm there in the second round, and it's like 2 degrees Celsius. It's blowing 50 k's an hour, and it's raining sideways, and like I'm 12 over or something, on whatever hole it was. And I'm just like, I just want to go home. Like it's just been such a long time, and it's unfortunate. Like it was obviously such an important week for me. Top 40, get guaranteed starts. That was the goal. And, to basically be out of it after, the back 9 in the second round, and, be out there in the pissing down rain and the weather, was just, just one of those moments where I just really didn't want to be on a golf course. And it was a great learning week for me. Like I learned a lot, in terms of, myself preparing for events, kind of getting logistics sorted for events like caddies and things like that. Like I learned a hell of a lot that week. It was unfortunate that I had to learn it the hard way and in such an important week. But again, it's just one of those things where I now know, what it takes to be at a Korn Ferry Q school, especially at final stage, and how good these guys are at golf. such a fine line between, making it and not. Like, obviously guys will miss by one and, they can recount all the shots that they could have saved here and there, but it's just a matter of turning up that week and just getting it done. And the guys that, make that top 40 or whatever, like, they've just done it before and they know what it takes to get it done. And I now know what it takes, and I know I've got a lot of work to do, but like I said, I learned a lot of really good lessons that week, and I'm really looking forward to what the future has.
What does conditional status mean? What does that get you for next year, in terms of starts, in terms of entry, etc.?
In terms of starts, I mean, obviously because of my finish at final stage, I won't get any starts. There'll be a number of guys with conditional that will get some starts just in those kind of weeks where, it might be one of those kind of smaller events or ones that guys don't go and typically play. So some guys with conditional will get some starts. But yeah, so basically for the most part with conditional, obviously I become a member of the Korn Ferry Tour. So I get privileges such as like TPC privileges. So, I then become a member of like that TPC network, meaning that, any of the TPCs in the US, I'm allowed to go out and practice at. In terms of entries, I get a much cheaper entry fee into the Mondays for the Korn Ferry. I think, for your average Joe who wants to go play, it might be $400 or $500. I think I only have to pay $100. I get exempt into the Mondays for PGA Tour events, so I don't have to do those pre-queues on the Thursday or Friday. So that obviously helps a lot as well. And I think same thing, it might only be $100 entry fee. But then obviously being a member as well, if I was to, do a Monday and qualify into an event, my money can count to the Order of Merit. So essentially if I was to have a really good week, and top 25 gets you an invite into the following week. So if I was to Monday into an event, finish in the top 25, I get to start the following week. And obviously if I finish top 25 again, you get to start the following week. But if I just happen to have a few good weeks and play well, that money counts to the Order of Merit. And, essentially when they have a re-rank, if I'm in a position where I've made enough money, I'm eligible to re-rank into a better category, which means that I can then find myself playing the rest of the year. So that's the important thing. If I get over there on Monday and get into an event, if I play well, I can find myself playing every event out there for the rest of the year.
How much of next year have you kind of scoped out? You said you obviously plan to spend much of the year over there. Have you figured out where you're going to be? I know that there's parts of Florida that's almost like an Australian embassy now for our golfing community. So we base yourself kind of in that area as being the epicenter, the place that kind of allows you to travel and get to the stuff that's close by?
No, I'm leaning more toward basing myself in Scottsdale in Arizona. It's a place that I feel really comfortable in. Like I went to junior college there for 2 years. I got a lot of friends there. I kind of know the area a bit. I've spent a lot of time there. So it's a place that I really like. The weather's amazing. The golf courses are pure. Everything about Scottsdale is great. The restaurants are good. The food's good. It's such a cool place. There's always stuff happening. It's just a really cool spot. So I can see myself, I'm going to base myself there. There's TPC Scottsdale there, which I'll be able to kind of set up my base at and practice out of. So I'm going to head back over there. Well, the plan is to head back over after the Aussie PGA, set myself up. I'll do, there's 2 Mondays. Well, it's a Monday and a Wednesday. They're the qualifying days for the 2 events I think it's in Panama and Colombia, which are early on in the Korn Ferry. The first 2 events in the Bahamas, which I don't think there's any Mondays for. So I'll head over, do those Mondays, and then I'll head over to Scottsdale, kind of have a couple of weeks to set my base up. I'll do the Monday for the waste management while I'm there as well. And then kind of once I get everything set up, like I'll just be chasing the Mondays after that. So I haven't had a full look at the Korn Ferry schedule yet. I don't know exactly where it goes. I think it's mostly kind of Midwest, kind of East Coast, those first kind of 4 or 5 months, I believe. I'm not 100% sure. But yeah, I mean, I'll just be, chasing those Mondays. So I'll like I said, I'll have my base in Scottsdale, but I don't plan on being there that often because I'll just be traveling and just chasing those Mondays. So that's the plan as of right now.
I want to be delicate about this next one because I don't want to get you in trouble. You've got an entire summer of home events to play, and I don't want you to say something that might piss the wrong people off. But it's given you've seen the other side now. You've seen what's possible. You've seen, albeit at a larger scale, and we're never going to be America in terms of size or stature. But how frustrating is it for you to come back here and understand what a lot of your good friends has been going through in terms of a lack of opportunity compared to what you've, and I know you feel incredibly fortunate to do what you've done, but when you compare your experience to say the past, 8 to 10 months compared to a lot of people back here, trying to find a paycheck when tournaments aren't being played, how frustrating is it to know what is possible compared to what's the reality back home?
Yeah, it's obviously it's one of those things where it's completely, it feels like it's completely out of our control. Like there's really nothing that us as players feel like we can do. Like obviously we would love to. Obviously, like the OGPA started up and they're making a big push to have more of a say in things like this. But in terms of what I experienced and what I've seen happening here, like I do have to say, like I really do feel like for the guys at the PGA as well, because I do feel like they have been trying, maybe not as hard as we would like, but they have been trying. And when you see what like the state governments are doing with borders and things like that, and I don't like talking politics and whatever, like we're not going to get into any of that, but it's in America, like they're able to do what they're doing, and restart their tours the way they did because like they can travel whenever they want, wherever they want. Like I did 6 months there and I probably went to 15 different states with not a single border pass required, not a single vaccination check, nothing. It was just everybody, it's just fully open over there. So, here, obviously, for the Aussie Open to be cancelled 2 years in a row, like obviously that's, the most frustrating. It's our national open. It's, guys, it's what we get out of bed for to play that. Like it's one of those events that like I've played one. It was at my first one was at my home course, and it was just like the most amazing week ever. Like it's just awesome, playing your national open in front of crowds. Like it's just so good. So, in terms of the logistics and things like that, like I understand how hard it is for the PGA Tour here to get events up and running because, with the way that state premiers are controlling borders and things like that, like it's just so hard to plan anything because now there's this new variant coming out, Omicron or whatever it's called. Like all it's going to take is Palage or Dan Andrews to just shit themselves and the border will shut, and then all the plans that the PGA has for the 12 or 13 events over the next 4 or 5 months, it's like, well, now they can't do anything about it. And obviously then then as players we get angry and upset and we're disappointed and this, that, and the other. But it's like, it's just really, everyone's just in a really difficult position. But like I said, though, it is still frustrating to have seen what it's like in America and then, come back here and kind of see how strict and tight everything is and how hard it is to like for the PGA to get a schedule of events up and running without really any idea of what's going to happen. Like it's tough for everyone. But like I said, I do really feel for the guys here because, we finished up at, I think it was the New South Wales Open back in March. And like I said, I just was, I just went, I'm not sitting at home for another 6 months because even if COVID was no longer a thing, we wouldn't have had an event to play until August anyway, which is 3 or 4 months down the road. And then there would be that another kind of 2-month break until the summer kicks off again. So I just did what I did, just purely, I was selfish. I was like, I'm not doing this. I'm getting out of here. And obviously not a lot of guys are in that position to do that. Some guys have kids, some guys have got mortgages to pay, whatever, like they got mouths to feed and bills to pay. So they just can't afford to have 8 months on the sideline doing nothing. So, it's disappointing. And, I would love to have been home for this, short period and have played an Aussie Open. It looks like we're going to have an Aussie PGA, provided that things stay the way they are. But, the guys are just screaming for the tour to just get back up and running. And, even this Western Open, like it feels like it feels like an Aussie Open. Like there's all the big guns are out here playing, and guys they just want to play. Like they just want to play. And, whether it's for 50,000 or 10,000 or a million or 1.5 million, whatever, like guys they just want to play golf. And it's not even about the money anymore. Like I think everyone's just sick of sitting around not knowing and doing nothing. Like guys, they just want to play.
That's very well put. And I guess we've been banging the drum for a little while, KM, on this, because we obviously speak to people like yourself and other people who have, obviously not had the opportunities to play here in Australia. And I guess the lack of communication externally from our governing bodies has been frustrating for us as people who love the game. I can't imagine what it's like for you as players. And, if there are things going on behind the scenes, then we certainly don't know about it. And we can only form an opinion based on what we do know. So if we've been harsh, then it's for good reason, because we can only go with the information we've got. But probably want to finish you up on the OGPA, which you mentioned there. Obviously doing wonderful things, and we've certainly spoken about it plenty on this podcast, but we've seen you sharing some stuff on social media. I take it something that you're pretty passionate about, was?
Yeah, I obviously, Bryden and James are kind of the head of that. They're the big driving force behind it. And, I don't really know those guys all that well, but I've, since turning pro, like I've played with Bryden a couple of times and I've played with James and then got to know them. And, over the past, I guess, probably 6 or 8 months since they kind of started up, like, they're always sending out emails, letting us know, because I joined it, I spoke to a few guys and, they're just like, this OGPA is like what we need. Like we need a voice at the table, and this is our opportunity to do that. So I got behind them, speaking to a few of the guys. Everybody was on board, so I'm like, so am I. So the guys, kind of sending out emails all the time, letting us know what they're up to, what their plans are, what their goals are, things like that. And it's just a good cause. Like the guys just want a seat at the table, and they just want to be able to speak on behalf of the playing membership. And, like we have our TPC, as part of, the PGA, the board or whatever it is. But, it almost feels like they're just there, like kind of along for the ride. It's like the PGA kind of have their agenda and what they want to do. And, the TPC just kind of agree. Like it's just I've only been pro a couple of years, so I don't know the whole gist of how things work and what takes place, but it just feels like we need more of a say and more input into what actually happens on our tour, because I've listened to all the episodes over the last couple of months with you guys and who you've had on and whatever, and it's just really important for us going forward that we're more involved with what happens on our tour. And at the end of the day, which you guys have been saying for a couple of months now, there's no tour without us. We're the players, we're the members, we pay our membership fees, we're the ones out there playing. And if we're not out there playing, like there's no tour. So I just feel like it's, a pretty important position, like for us to be in as players, and to have, guys like Bryden and James kind of putting their hand up and taking the hit up, for us and taking it all on the chin. Like they're the guys that, they walk around events now and, everyone kind of knows who they are. And, it's almost like they've got targets on their back from some guys, which is weird, but it's just that vibe. But those boys, they're working hard. And their hearts are in the right place, and they're doing good work. So I think majority of the playing membership are behind them. We're all behind them. We're just kind of sounds like the boys are just waiting for a bit of a green light from the PGA Tour to kind of have a sit down and talk things over and get a bit of a strategy together moving forward.
The PGA Tour may not be perfect, but it's the biggest and best product of golf in the world, and it is a member-run tour. The players have an enormous say in the product and the format, and I don't think there's any coincidence in the fact that it's the pinnacle of the sport, playing week in, week out on a tour where the members have an enormous say. So I think it could only be a good thing for our tour back here if not suggesting you replicate or adopt the PGA Tour model wholesale, but at least parts of it, because it's much better than not putting on any events at all.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, like I said, guys just want to play. And, I remember earlier in the year when like the Gippsland Super Six event was like the first event that was restarting. And, I was from, whatever part of Sydney, Greater Sydney, which was a red zone. So trying to get into Victoria, you weren't allowed to be in a red zone for 14 days. And I remember picking up the phone and kind of calling Kim Felton and just saying, if I'm outside of a red zone for 14 days, like I'm allowed to come down and play. And I said, I'll go and get a hotel for 14 days on the border of Victoria. I said, if you guys can somehow arrange a golf course down on the Murray, somewhere on the border for us to just at least practice at for, a couple of weeks. I'm happy to go and sit there for 14 days in an orange zone or whatever it was. If I'm out of that red zone for 14 days, I can come play Gippsland. So I was like, I'll do that. And there was a few guys, like I sent a group message out to a bunch of guys saying, this is what I'm doing. I'm leaving tomorrow. I'm driving to Rich River and I'm going to go practice at Rich River for 2 weeks and just stay in a hotel so that I can play Gippsland. And some of the boys were on it. Like they were like, yeah, let's do it. So the boys just want to play. Everyone wants to play. And it's just at a point where it's like, we'll almost do anything just to get out there and just start playing a normal schedule again. So
I think in the words of the great coach Herman Boone, just let the boys play. Just let the boys play. That's all we want to say. We've taken up an awful lot of your time, considering you've got another round of golf to play tomorrow, and we're very fortunate that you've spared us that. You mentioned your parents earlier on, and I think outside of those two, we might be the proudest people of your journey in these past 5 or 6 months. It feels, thanks, I don't think it's a stretch to say it feels like a little bit of family doing their own thing on the other side of the world. And we're incredibly proud of what you've carved out for yourself, mate. And probably even more so knowing that the very best is still ahead. So really appreciate you taking the time to, I suppose, take us through the journey so far. And we'll absolutely stay tuned intently to it moving forward. And obviously then you and I need to align schedules for early next year, because we need to get you back to Perth and be on my arm for Drew's wedding. So
yeah, well, just get that border open, no quarantine, and I'll be there. I'll fly in, I'll fly out.
Gee whiz, you might have better luck getting in and out of America in that time than coming to Perth, mate.
I don't think you're wrong, and that's the scary part.
Yeah,
I'm pretty sure I've been afforded a +2, so I can have a person on each arm. So we're good to go, I think.
Oh, how good's that? Perfect. I'll be there with bells on.
Good man, Wiz. It's been a pleasure, mate, as always, and we look forward to watching what's next and having you on again in the future. Thanks again.
Awesome. Thanks, boys. It's been a pleasure.